Chinese President Xi Jinping expressed willingness to negotiate with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky after French President Emmanuel Macron urged Beijing to talk to Russia about the war in Ukraine, the European Union chief said. European Union Chair Ursula von der Leyen and Macron met with Xi in Beijing Thursday. Macron said the West must engage China to help end the crisis and prevent endless tensions that could split global powers into warring blocs. Xi, who has sought to position China as a potential mediator in the conflict but is seen by the West as a backer of Russia, responded by saying he hoped Moscow and Kyiv could hold peace negotiations as soon as possible. It was interesting to hear that President Xi reaffirmed his willingness to talk to Zelensky, said von der Leyen, calling his words positive. Xi said conversations could happen when the conditions and timing are right. Zelensky has repeatedly asked Xi to meet, including after the Chinese leader visited Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow last month. A French diplomatic source told Reuters that Xi was ready to call Zelensky. Russia's aggression in Ukraine has hit international stability, Macron told Xi, standing beside the Chinese president outside the Great Hall of the People at the start of their bilateral meeting. I know I can count on you to bring Russia back to its senses and everyone back to the negotiating table. China proposed a 12-point peace plan for the Ukraine crisis that called for both sides to agree to a gradual de-escalation leading to a comprehensive ceasefire. The plan was largely rejected by the West because of China's refusal to condemn Russia. The United States and NATO later said China was considering sending weapons to Russia, which Beijing denied. Arming the aggressor is a clear violation of international law, said von der Leyen. This will indeed significantly damage relations between the EU and China. A French diplomatic source said Macron had urged Xi not to give weapons to Russia, and Xi said it was not his war. In comments after the meeting, Xi called on Ukraine and Russia to continue peace talks and find a political solution to the conflict. More than a year into a conflict that has claimed thousands of lives, there has been little sign that the two sides want to negotiate. Previously, China succeeded in mediating peace talks between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which have been at odds since 7 years ago and left the Middle East region in turmoil. U.S. questions China's commitment to help end Russo-Ukrainian war. United States, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken considered that China was inconsistent with its plan to facilitate peace in Ukraine. This is evident from the attitude of the Chinese government, which on the other hand often provides support to Russia in various ways. I think China is trying to have both, wanting to be seen as a party advancing peace and at the same time continuing to support Russia in a different way, he said in an interview quoted by TASS Friday. According to him, China should focus on convincing Russia to truly respect Ukraine's sovereignty as a country and return the 4 Ukrainian territories that were officially annexed to Russia based on a referendum. Meanwhile, the U.S. is not the only party urging China to commit to the support they promised Ukraine. Previously, French President Emmanuel Macron also asked President Xi Jinping to immediately negotiate with the Russian leader to end the invasion of Ukraine. Macron believes that China, which often establishes communication with Russia, can become an extension of every leader in the world who hopes that the conflict in Ukraine will end. According to him, China has a big role to play in finding a peaceful solution to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Macron said Xi Jinping and his staff should be able to help countries in Europe to put pressure on Russia not to use chemical or nuclear weapons. I know I can count on you to bring Russia back to common sense and everyone to the negotiating table, he told Xi outside the Great Hall of the Chinese people. On the other hand, in comments reported by state media CCTV, Xi said that China and France have the ability and great responsibility to transcend differences and restraints as the world undergoes profound historical changes. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in February 2023 also published a document containing 12 points clarifying Beijing's position on finding a political solution to the Ukraine problem. The document specifically calls for a ceasefire, respect for the legitimate security interests of all countries, a solution to the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, an exchange of prisoners between Moscow and Kyiv, and the rejection of unilateral sanctions not endorsed by the UN Security Council. The Chinese government considers that dialogue and negotiation is the only viable solution to the crisis in Ukraine. China also called on all sides to support Moscow and Kyiv working in the same direction and resume dialogue as soon as possible. Xi Jinping is called ready to go down the mountain to help end the Russia-Ukraine war. China is said to be ready to work with France to end the Russia-Ukraine war through negotiations. This was revealed by a French diplomatic source on Thursday, after President Emmanuel Macron had dialogue with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The president and Xi agreed to work hard to hasten the end of the war and get open negotiations with full respect for international law, the source said. The talks between Macron and Xi lasted quite a long time, around 1.5 hours, as reported by Reuters. After meeting Macron, Xi called on Ukraine and Russia to resume peace talks and find a political solution to the raging war. Meanwhile, the source did not provide specific details on whether China had indicated a change in its position on the Russia-Ukraine war. However, the source said that Xi and Macron agreed to hold further talks. The source added that Xi also indicated that he is ready to call Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky one day. Macron also urged China not to send anything that could be used by Russia in the war in Ukraine. As previously reported by Compass.com, Macron asked Xi to negotiate with Russia and help end the war in Ukraine before the two had dialogue. Russia's aggression in Ukraine has hit international stability, Macron told Xi outside the Great Hall of the People in Beijing ahead of their meeting. I know I can count on you to bring Russia back to senses and everyone back to the negotiating table, Macron continued. Macron's visit with European Commission Chair Ursula von der Leyen comes after France and the EU's relations with Beijing have soured for years.